I want the best investment. That's a common thing for investors to say, but what does it actually mean? It sounds so straightforward, but is it? The short answer is no. The long answer is broken down in the rest of this video, though. This is Marked Perspectives, and today we're looking at the best performer. I'm Cam Irvin, lifestyle financial planner and advisor, and this is brought to you by Irvin Wendborn. The best investment really kind of boils down to two main factors. That's a person's perspective of what is best and time. By perspective, I mean how does a person feel about what they're investing in? To one person, the best investment might be keeping their money as safe as possible so they can know it's protected, and anything else would cause them too much stress to deal with. While to another person, the best investment might be something in their own personal health, or perhaps investing into their community, a privately held donut shop, or just good old-fashioned high returns. Someone's priorities matter to determine what is actually best. The other factor is time, because the best investment today will look very different compared to the best investment over the next 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, or 50 years. One investment will not be the best for all of those different time periods, so it's crucial to understand the timescale that we're actually planning for. Let's look at some examples. We'll start with the different sectors of the S&P 500, the largest index in the world that's based in the US. This chart shows the sectors of the S&P 500 over a 15-year period from 2008 to 2022. The best performing sector is listed at the top for any given individual year, and the worst performing sector is shown at the bottom. What you can see from this chart is that nothing is consistent. Not one sector is consistently bad or consistently good. They're all over the place. There isn't even a pattern that one year it's bad and it's followed by a really good year or vice versa. It's just totally random. There are some interesting points though when we look at this. Information technology, or what we call tech, was the best performing sector overall, which probably isn't a huge surprise to many people. However, communication services performed the worst over the 15 years, giving an average annualized return of only 3.68% for the last 15 years. If you don't know what the communication services companies are, a few big names that you probably have heard of are Netflix, Meta, Facebook, Verizon, Vodafone, Google, Alphabet, and AT&T. A lot of times people think these are big tech names, but they're not. They're actually categorized as communications. Surprised? Well, hold on. The next bit that's kind of surprising is that consumer discretionary was the third best performing sector, returning about 11.01% per year. Now, that includes a lot of retail brand and businesses like Nike, Tesla, Airbnb, McDonald's, Amazon, Stellantis, which is really just a car company whose brands include Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, Fiat, Alfa Romeo, and Citroën. I don't think many people expected, back when we were in 2008 during the global financial crisis, that discretionary purchases were going to be such a winning sector to invest in for the next 15 years. But that's the point, isn't it? The S&P 500 itself actually averaged out all these sectors, so as you'd expect, it performed in the middle, which is kind of like a Goldilocks zone of not too hot and not too cold. So sectors are rather unpredictable and somewhat surprising over the long term. Well, is that just sectors, while other things are more predictable, like which country will have the best stock market? Maybe, but let's take a look at the data. Before we do, take a guess though. What country would you guess would have the highest performing stock market out of the 47 developed and developing countries? Think about it. Here's a grid that shows each country's individual year performance and their averages. It's kind of like the chart we just looked at, but just separated instead of about sectors, it shows countries. The best country's stock market from 2003 to 2022 was Denmark. Now for any Kiwis, New Zealand came in spot number 23 out of all these countries, while the US ranked at 14th, just behind Sweden. So now the question becomes, out of every person you know or have ever listened to about investing in the share market, who can you think of that said that Denmark was the place to invest at any time over the last 20 years? Personally, having worked in finance for a while now, I counted up everybody I know that gave me the answer of Denmark, and it came out to a very nice round 0. But time is the other element that we talked about. So if we change from the last 20 years to the last 5 years, this chart looks really different again. You'll notice that Indonesia went from being number 2 to the 21st spot. Italy went from 40th to the 17th spot, jumping way up, and Colombia fell all the way from 4th place to 37th place. Now, if we look at just what happened over the last 2 years, from 2021 to 2022, then Turkey becomes the best performing stock market in the world. New Zealand drops from 3rd place to last, and Chile did much better. And if you remember back to early 2022, there was another country that was part of this data that would have been number 3, but then they invaded another territory and their share market dried up completely. So we can start to see that countries, just like sectors, are not predictable, and what's considered best shifts over the time frame that we're considering. Let's also consider asset classes though, which is like saying the chunks of investment between cash, bonds, property, shares, and the like. We can again see that things look pretty close to random between those different asset classes, except one pattern emerges. If you took a portfolio that blended all of these different asset classes so that 50% was in shares and property diversified around the world, and the other 50% is in bonds and cash, you'd be right in the middle. That portfolio never actually performed at the top. In fact, it never even got in the top 3 spots for any one individual year. However, it also never showed in the bottom 3. So a 50-50 portfolio was more consistent and had lower risk, which makes sense because it was more diversified. One last example is when it comes to investing in individual shares or stocks. Let's take a look at a stock that had one of the best years of performance of any stock in the US since 1980. It was Qualcomm, and in 1999 it returned 2,620%, which would turn a $1,000 investment into $27,200. Pretty good. But that was just 1999. So imagine you hear on the news in the year 2000 what a great investment Qualcomm is, and on the 1st of January 2000 you invest and then you wait. Well, you'd have made about 106% over the next 23 years, which over doubles your money. But when you compare that to the S&P 500, the S&P grew by 229% and for lower risk. So picking the best stock of the last 4 decades still ended up not really being a winner in the long run if you just went by an individual year. So in conclusion, we have a few takeaways. Firstly, the best investment depends on what timescale you're looking at. Short term is not the same as long term. Next, if you think you want the best investment, it will help set better expectations to know that these things are variable and unpredictable. Also, the best solution is to diversify as broadly as you can across sectors, countries, and asset classes. Lastly, wait. The longer, the better for allowing compounding growth to take place. However, trying to pick the short-term winners is a loser's game, and every study shows that most professionals and individuals underperform when they try to day trade, at least compared to what an index offers. As the quote goes, if you spend more than 13 minutes analyzing economic and market forecasts, you've wasted 10 minutes. If you enjoyed this video, reach out. You can always find us at our home on the web at irvinwenborn.co.nz, email, or LinkedIn. And if there's somebody else that you think might enjoy or find value in this, share it. Find out.